Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Since I don't know exactly what time it is at the place where you are right now, I will only say hello for now. My name is Oliver Hunziker. I am from Switzerland. I have been working in the field of shared parenting for more than 15 years now. In this time, I have been involved in several major changes in the Swiss family law as a member of civil society, but also as an expert in the field. As you can see, I am working for several NGO institutions in Switzerland and worldwide. Today, I would like to talk to you about the situation of male victims of family violence, the behavior of society towards them, and the possible consequences thereof. More specific, I would like to point out that this behavior might represent a potential blind spot in our awareness of the whole subject of family violence. As founder and past president of the first shelter for male victims of family violence in Switzerland, I have worked in this field intensively for more than 10 years. Let me state clearly that I support all efforts to protect victims of family violence. I just want to claim this protection for all victims, no matter what gender they have. But this is not what happens today in most countries. Let's face it, violence is not a male-only thing. It is simply human. In other words, there are people who use violence to reach their goals. Some of them are male, some are female. When we talk about family violence, we should never forget that this violence can be initiated by any of the parents. I will show you a few figures in a moment. There are several studies worldwide claiming that the share of family violence by gender could be almost equal. These studies are based on field studies. From another point of view, it seems to be obvious that humans can be violent or use violence to gain their goals, and this is clearly independent from their gender. The figures that you see are published by and available at the Federal Office of Statistics in Switzerland. They're based on police reports. The original statistics are published in German only, so I have modified some of the titles, but not the figures. These are all extracts of the police report on family violence published by the Federal Office of Statistics. This first table is a list of different forms of violence, all from family violence. As you can see, the share of male victims can be very different according to different forms of violence. The yellow highlighted lines are making clear that very different kind of violence show high percentages of male victims. The next table shows the different figures of victims by gender. As you can see, the percentage number of male victims has been rising over the past almost 10 years and reaches 30% almost in 2019. Remember, these are proven figures from police reports. Can you imagine how often the police will really confirm a man to be the victim? Traditional role models, as well as alleged inherent necessities, often lead to so-called pragmatical decisions when it comes to police operations in family violence. The same thing is happening when men are claiming to be victims towards public consulting places. Therefore, the dark field could be rather high, which suspects that the 30% of male victims that are reported by the police report are probably way too low, and the 50% reported by several international studies could even be realistic. But within all this, we should never forget that, of course, men can be victim of other men, also in family violence. Gay men could be attacked by their male partner, sons by their father. But considering this, it also applies to female victims, who could be harmed by their mother or their lesbian partner. And last but not least, we know of cases where parents were attacked by their children. Again, no relation to gender on neither side. All this means at the end that the number of victims does not necessarily reflect the number of aggressors of the other sex. And here, one more last table to show the relation of violence against children showed by gender and age of the accused parent. As you can see, in the most involved groups, which are adults from 18 to probably 49, there is a very relevant share of females accused parents up to 40%. So, even according to the police report, almost 1/3 of victims of family violence in Switzerland are male. But are we treating them equally? Do they have the same possibilities and options as women would? Let's put the light towards the recognition of male victims in several aspects. In our society, male victims of family violence are still mostly ignored or even laughed at. They often face disbelief when telling their stories. There is a large assumption that when it comes to family violence, the man is the aggressor and the woman is the victim. This black and white point of view is very common, although it very often has little reference to reality. Since this is a largely accepted point of view, men often face strong resistance when claiming for help as a victim. They rarely get support by the police or other governmental institutions. They also rarely get financial support to help them getting away from the violent place. Shelter for male victims are rare, only 3 compared to 18 women's shelter in Switzerland, and they do not get any money from the government up until now. There is almost no political support as well for the subject at all. Being a male victim can be embarrassing. Because we don't help these men the way we would help them when they were female, we force them to either remain in violent environments or leave, but leave everything behind, including their children. As a society, we are therefore not treating all victims of family violence equally. We act remarkably different based on whether the victim is male or female. Once again, reported numbers show a clearly higher number of female victims of family violence. My speech is not about discrediting these victims, it is about the minority of victims that tend to be forgotten. It is not about total number of victims. It is about the fact that we focus all effort on the victims of one gender and completely ignore the other 30%. You might wonder why I am explaining this and what it has to do with shared parenting. The link is indeed very simple. I am sure we all agree that a violent parent should not be allowed to have the kids. True? Now, what would that mean in a case of a violent mother? Just think about it and try to imagine how authorities would usually deal with such a situation in your country. You will most likely find the mistake immediately. Shared parenting is the basic principle of parenthood anyway. Every child has 2 parents. Hopefully the child knows them both. This concept can also be understood as a 4 eyes concept. If one parent fails in one respect, the other can correct or take over. So it makes a lot of sense to continue that concept after separation and divorce. If both parents are capable and willing to care for their children, I am absolutely convinced that this should be the general solution. But what means capable? Would someone who has been violent in the past be considered to be capable? You might answer no, and I would mostly agree with you. When we talk about family violence, we all have pictures of beaten women in our head. We tend to forget that there are all sorts of family violence, including psychical ones. And very important, there might be violence because of the separation and not the other way around. Shouldn't we consider these facts when deciding about where the kids should live in the future? Wouldn't we need to be absolutely sure we know what happened exactly? To decide about shared parenting in cases of family violence, a distinct clarification has to be taken to find out what level of violence was raised by whom. Based on that clarification, decisions about whether or not to allow shared parenting can be taken on a proved base. Just think about what it would mean if, in a case of family violence, kids would have to remain with her mother, although she was the aggressor. These kids would lose any 4 eyes protection from their father. This would be a real tragedy, but it is not too unlikely today. Ignoring the fact that men and boys can be victims of family violence too means ignoring an important part of reality. It is a blind spot, And this blind spot puts a high risk on decision makers to decide based on wrong preconditions, leaving behind an everlasting mess. My conclusions are: we need strategies to cope with family violence, no matter of gender. Failing to do so will leave a blind spot and will put the strategy at risk. We won't solve the problem if we only take care of half of it. We need to have solutions for victims of family violence, no matter of their gender. Male victims need access to the same kind of help as female victims do. Decision makers at all levels must be taught to treat victims of family violence equal, no matter of their gender. Fighting against violence on women only is not good enough. Shelter for female victims are very important, but they are not enough, as we need to have shelters for all victims of family violence. Family violence must be fought at in all forms. We need to develop procedures that allow us to protect all victims. In particular, we should never forget about the involved children, and we need to be able to find wise decisions based on evidence, not on role models. Only when we accept that violence can occur from both sexes, we will be able to find valid conclusions and methods to really fight all kinds of family violence together and substantially. And only then our measures will be truly in the best interest of the child. Thank you.